A music community, a group of people involved in a given type of music supporting each other, a movement with a common goal moving forward, spreading sounds and a feeling of togetherness. But how do you create that? How do you get people to take interest in your thing? What's different and what strategies are the same living in a small town or in one of the biggest cities on the planet? Today we'll be looking at those common denominators, talking to Cecilia Soojeong from Zandari Festa in Seoul, Korea, and Dennis Lyxzén, frontman, vocalist, label owner and promoter from Umeå in Sweden. Viva Talks goes independent. How much passion and stamina do you need to create a music community?
In the 90s, Umeå really came up, exploded as a musical city in Sweden, and then also producing lots of great bands. Where did you start it all, and how did you build this community?
Well, I think one of the things that happens is that when we live in a really small town, 7 hours from Stockholm, just straight up north. So it's in the middle of nowhere. And I think that when we started playing music, and especially when we started playing punk and hardcore music, there was no other people doing that. So if you wanted to see a punk band play, you had to put on the show. If you wanted to see a hardcore band play, you had to put on the show. So in the late 80s, early 90s, we started booking shows ourselves. In mid-90s, I started a record label with some friends, and we started really booking shows. And the whole scene exploded. And we had, for a small town, we could have easily 500-600 people at every show we had. One of our mottos in the 90s was just create your own fun.
Cecilia, is that comparable if you take the situation which Dennis and his friends had in Umeå and compare it to Seoul, which is such a big city? How have you been working in your team starting up this indie scene basically?
Yeah, but it doesn't sound that unfamiliar. It's pretty sounds familiar to us because the neighborhood we are using for the festival is called Hongdae area. Actually, that's where indie music was born in Korea. And those, I think around 15 years, let's say, until the 2010, 15 years. And that was the golden era of the indie rock music of Korea. And there's a lot of bands were playing. I mean, if you people would say easily that, if you're hanging out in Hongdae, that's, are you a band? Something like that. But interestingly, after the breaking out of the K-pop in Asia and in the world around 2010, and Hongdae area became brutally gentrified so far. So now actually the whole area is swiped with the big buildings and crazy clubs, commercial EDM clubs, so it's really actually now it's a little tough for us to survive.
You said it yourself now that you're in some kind of trouble. How do you work with that? How do you work to survive? Is public funding, is that a way of moving forward, or do you need just help from private persons?
Yeah, I think the Zandari Festa actually is the key festival for whole community and culture, because it started in 2012 actually. The people who started Zandari Festa thought it's really, really important to get together, and then they went to South by Southwest, and then they found that okay, this could work in Korea because we have tons of a lot of venues in a small neighborhood, so everyone can just walk around to visit those venues. They've started to invite more international delegates and the bands, and we sort of moved forward to that kind of direction. So now we are it's indie music for everyone in the world. So now people understand that Zandari Festa is not only the festival where all the indie, just indie people kind of gathered, but you can discover a new music from all over the world.
If we move over to Sweden again and Umeå, how do you work to keep the scene thriving and keep it interesting for people to visit?
At the moment, I'm in a juncture in life where I feel that some young kids need to sort of take the reins. Because I've been doing this since the early 90s. I've been booking shows and booking bands. And I have 4 active bands on my own. So it's a lot of work. But that being said, I try to help out. There's a couple of gangs of people that put on shows and do stuff. Right now in our hometown, the biggest issue is to find a good venue. to have these shows. I mean, and I know they're looking, the DIY spot is looking for a new venue, and I think as soon as that opens up, I think it's going to be easy to get people excited about going to shows again as soon as we can go to shows again. I mean, the other thing that people need to do is to stay creative, and so once we can actually start doing shows again, there's new music, there's new bands, there's new ideas that come out of it.
So if we move into like to keeping up an identity of like Umeå and the Seoul and the scene and everything. So if we start with you, Dennis, what do you think we made and still makes like Umeå special?
I think one of the things that happened in Umeå, a lot of small towns in Sweden, people moved to Stockholm or maybe Gothenburg to sort of create a career of themselves. One of the important aspects of Sweden, of Umeå, was that a lot of bands stay put here. A lot of bands said, let's live here in this isolated part of the world. I don't mind Stockholm, I don't mind Gothenburg, I don't mind London or New York, but when you live in a small town, people are not that worried about what's cool and what's hip, so you can sort of cultivate your own idea. And I think that's really been important for a lot of the more successful bands from Umeå.
Is Seoul different in some way from like comparable cities? Do you have, what would you say, do you have a special identity, like music-wise?
Well, in Korea, if you are talking about culture and art, it's all about Seoul. It's very like a central focused country. So unfortunately, we don't have like cities such as like Umeå in Korea. So it's like a lot of small cities, even though they are not very small. I mean, second city, third city, they don't really have a their own or good infrastructure of the like indie music, for instance, or art, independent art. So it's pretty sad because a lot of things happens in Seoul. We have different neighbors where you can actually enjoy some sort of, for instance, this neighbor, we do the festival, it's all about live music or K-pop dance. Really interesting. We're in the shadow now because the K-pop actually are doing everything. So it's sort of that kind of area, but still very cultural and artsy and stuff. And then the neighbor where I live, it's 40 minutes by metro, and that's all about dance music, house, techno clubs are going on, nightlife, that kind of stuff. So it's like different characters.
Is there like a universal thing in this, like we're talking about building a community, and is it the same everywhere?
I believe in that because I mean, more and more, it's really hard. If you do a sort of an indie scene in this kind of big city, you feel like you are mentally isolated. I mean, everyone likes K-pop, not me. So what am I doing? And lots of my friends are giving up being a, let's say, punk musician. But I don't want to give up, but there's no one who is going to listen to or that kind of stuff. But doing Zandari Festa, we felt like the best moment I see is that like that kind of musicians, international musicians and Korean musicians, if they are together, it doesn't seem weird. And they are the like family. They look like a family because they understand each other than other people in Korea. So it's really, really beautiful.
And what would you say, Dennis? Is it like the community building? You've been touring a lot.
As Cecilia say, I mean, there's something really fascinating about the fact that I can live in the north of Sweden, and I'm sure if me and Cecilia would hang out, we have a lot of the same reference points as far as music goes and culture. I mean, even a city as Seoul, that's a massive city, you need a couple of people can make that difference. And I mean, in a small town, that's the same thing. I mean, in our town, we always joke about like, yeah, one guy moved, 3 bands broke up. But I mean, in a small scene in a big city, it's the same thing. Like, don't wait for anyone else to sort that out for you. Like, if you want to see great bands, book the shows. If you want to hear great music, maybe you become the DJ or maybe you become the band, because that's how I think you build a community.
So it seems the first steps in getting things to happen is to actually just do things with other people. It is possible. Please follow us on our socials and hope to see you on our YouTube channel, and that way we won't be able to slip anything past your goalie. Thanks for watching.